I am here with Ab Emam, and he is a serial entrepreneur. How's it going, Ab?
Doing great. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. We're calling during quite a wintry storm. It's almost freezing here in Florida, and Ab is in DC, where it is very cold as well. So I'm excited to unpack all of the successes that you've had. But before we get there, let's talk about your background. How did you get started in business?
Sure. Well, yes, it is freezing cold. We've had 12 inches of snow. My back hurts from plowing because couldn't get the snow dude to come over and get it done. So I'm here struggling a little bit. But anyway, yeah. So my background, guys, it's in my background, my interest, how I got into this business. Like a lot of founders. Sometimes it's luck, timing, and some sort of, harsh environment or something, right? Something that appeals to that. So for my story, it really is, when I graduated college in an MIS degree, back then it was management information systems. So I wasn't fully a nerd, to get into computer science, but I was excited about computers back then. It was like the 486 DX or whatever. Those smaller computers, Mac, whatever. Um, so that was my thing. I've always been an entrepreneur, always trying to do something, whether it was like gardening or selling a car or doing something. Always trying to find a way to make money. So graduated college, worked for a big five, KPMG. I hated it. It was like 3 months stint. It was one of those things where it was like, geez, this is not what they sold me, right? I interned there. It was fun. And then, go and work in a cubicle right after college and just sort of be billable on this a very boring project. So it's interesting. So I had actually, prior to that, I was recruited by a startup in Palo Alto. And I didn't take that offer because I was like, I want to do that big five route like most people wanted to do. So anyway, so I didn't take that route. 3 months into it, I was like, God, this is terrible. This is miserable. Like, let me reach out to that recruiter and see if there's still room for me to explore an opportunity with them. So I called the recruiter, sent an email. She followed right back up to me, and we connected. And that week, the VP of sales actually for this company, it's called Responses, was actually going to be in DC. So he flew down. We met in the lobby. And we had just a great conversation. He hired me right in the spot. I was like, off to the races. Let's go, California, right? So that was the thing. So back and forth between Palo Alto, California, that startup scene. It was like hype of Silicon Valley. It was 2000, 2001, and just an incredible journey of that culture and that experience. And being 22 years old, you're flying around everywhere and networking and meeting with great companies. I mean, they were selling into the enterprise accounts. Long story short, uh, the dot-com boom, fell apart. If you remember that, back in 2021, 9/11 happened. 2022, 2002. So I got laid off, and that was, I think, what really like started everything. I got laid off. I spent, all my time back in DC. And at this time, DC was an incredibly boring town to be in. If you'd worked in the village Silicon Valley and you have been part of that startup culture and you come back to DC, it's just government and it was just terrible. So I went through this point where I think in 6 months I had six different jobs, like, hopping from one, trying to find the next thing, from selling, little hard box software, cybersecurity to selling procurement software and so forth. It was a terrible experience. And I remember going through this challenge and this process and turning. I think this is the first time in my life that I think I was like sort of depressed, right? Trying to figure my life out. Like you go from this incredible startup culture with unlimited expenses and flying around everywhere and having just a wonderful time and learning to shoot, like I can't find a job that I, want. And the Silicon Valley.com just didn't exist at this point. So I was like, my dad had always encouraged me. I was like, start your own thing, just see where it goes, right? Like it's, you've saved up some money, just do that. So I took that. I took that advice and started a business, and it was called Acquire Now. And the idea was that I would acquire customers for clients, right? So it was like affinity marketing, and you got into ads and paid media and all the other stuff. And I landed, some really, really great gigs with, at that time, was a lot of the online universities and software companies still trying to like make an impact and get customers. So I did that. That's the beginning of my story. So I had some challenges, and it forced me to like say, shoot, this is not working out for me. Let me try to create my own startup. Let me try to create my own Silicon Valley in the DC area. So that was the first business that I started.
Nice. Nice. I like that the sort of I'm assuming many people that are listening to this can relate to the kind of finding your path after that startup layoff because you got the bug. You saw
Yeah, the
like what was
bug.
possible. You saw that really scaling, selling into big accounts, what that was like, and just sort of that creative aspect. And I encourage a lot of young people that are listening, as well as just in general, to go work at a startup and just experience that because you learn more there than just dramatically you'll ever learn at like a school environment or at a big company. It's like a fire hose of of responsibility and information all at once. So I like that arc that you kind of went through this, caught the bug, jumped job to job to try and figure it out, and that pushed you to create your own, which is kind of figured out
Yeah,
your path. So let's talk about Acquire Now. What was that business? You were acquiring company or customers for other companies. What were you tracking? Like, what were some of the KPIs that you were building as you built that
sure.
business?
So the Acquire Now was all about gaining customers for our clients, and
Mhm.
this is the top and hype of online marketing. So it's all digital marketing. So it was a lot of acquisition as far as matching offline databases to email databases, and later on you can get the social aspects to it as well. So it was like the extra demographics. So work with like Equifax and some of those big players trying to match extra demographics and data to current client databases, because there was a lot of at that time, there's a lot of offline databases in trying to like get them online. So one of my clients was Godiva Chocolate. That was like one of my first customers, and that was the thing. They provided me with an API to tap into their offline database, and every week, every month, we would pull 30, 50,000 customers, and would match email addresses to it or other demographics that I could get from Equifax, try to like create a much better database for them to target their customers. So that was the marketing. It was really a marketing agency, but digital marketing. And then we got into email and actually managing their email accounts and sending out emails on their behalf and creating automation and triggers based on buying habits.
Got it. So it was kind of like enrichment in a way where you're like,
Enrichment, yes. Enrichment and email marketing and in affinity marketing too, right? Placing ads on different areas. And then I got into actually buying Google ads for clients and driving traffic back to the site to convert. So it was a full service digital marketing agency.
nice, nice. Okay. And how big did the team get? Did you scale up the team over the course of one year?
Yeah. It was one of those businesses I didn't really have to scale up the team. I think at our highest peak, we were like 12, 13 employees. And at that time, I'd gotten a partner into the business, somebody that, knew a lot more about marketing and been around a lot more. So mind you, I was 23, 24 at this time. And this is another lesson that, young entrepreneurs learn. And, you go from one challenge to another. You're young, right? So brought in a partner and, made a mistake along the way by, him buying 51% of the company. And, the business really taken off. It was hot. So it was like, you got a partner, bought in. He came in as a minority owner and then bought his way up. And somehow or another, I was silly enough to sell 51%. It was a lot of empty promises made and all that stuff. So that happened, and then I'm sorry, my voice is catching here. Uh, he took full control, and then it became nasty. Right. Once you lose that control of your own firm,
Hmm.
things doesn't really go the way that you thought. So we had a big breakup, and gosh, it cost me a lot of money. Like it was one of those things. First business. I remember I had a conversation with my attorneys at that time when we were splitting up, and he said to me, he was like, "This what you're about to go through right now," because it was very emotional. I was like, "Gosh, I'm like, this is all happening. No control of the business and so forth." And I was like, "This is the best MBA that you will ever learn." He was like, "You're going to go through it, you're going to get over it, and you'll get on to something else. But this is better than any MBA. Hard way of learning." And I did, right? So anyway, so we split off and etc. And right away, like I move on to my next venture. I knew I had to. I was like, I'm gonna sell the rest of my portion to him. I'm done with this business. I want to get in something else. And that's when I founded another business, and business was called GovTrends. And GovTrends essentially did the same model, but for the government. Because at this time, I was in DC and government was still trying to catch up with all online. So we got into government hosting websites and running email marketing for government accounts, and really took control of US Congress, Senate, and all that stuff, since it's a lot of political stuff here. So that was the spinoff to the next version of my entrepreneurial experience. From one challenge, you start the business goes, you still learning along the way, and then you get fucked, right? Sorry to use that language. And then that's when you really, really learn. So that was the next venture, got into the government work.
Nice. Nice. I like that one also is an edge geographically, like where you're
Yeah.
based, you have the edge there over, let's say people even in Silicon Valley. But I really enjoy when people have edges like that
Yeah.
with the business. So how does that one go? The trajectory of that one? You scale that one to, is it a bigger team? Obviously, you learn the mistake of not selling off to, the minority, which is a fantastic lesson here for so many people listening to this is spotting trends of a minority shareholder and then they just sort of grow over to 51%. That's a
Yeah.
fantastic golden nugget here for people listening,
Yeah.
maintaining control, but also just understanding the opportunity cost that you saw where you were like, I'm in my 20s. I can just sell and move on. And that's a similar situation that I experienced where it was like, are you going to do something else in the future? Answer is always yes. So
Yes.
to,
Yes. Yes.
take what you need and leave and move on. So let's talk about this. You said it was GovTrends. Let's talk about
GovTrends.
that.
Yes. Yes.
How did
So,
that scale?
so Steve, you actually bring up a really good point, because when you're young, when you're in your early 20s and you don't have the same responsibilities as you have later on in your 30s and your 40s, right? You can maneuver so quickly. And if your mind is sharp and you're not into ego and you're not like into just holding on stuff and being upset over things, because that's what business is, right? You run into challenges all the time and you got to find a way to solve it or cut your losses and move on. So anyway, it's a really good lesson. And the other lesson also is that I learned, and I've never done it since, was that 51% ownership, because you just lose complete control. And it's a very, very good golden nugget for anyone that is a startup entrepreneur to have their own businesses. When you're looking for an investment and you're looking to raise money, you got to figure out exactly like, well, how much are you willing to give away? Because the minute you give away the majority control, you're at the mercy of your partners or your investors. Sometimes it works out well. It just at that particular time in my life, it didn't work out. I made a bad decision, and it is what it is. But I gained from that mistake, right? And that's where a lot of founders have to realize that you got to gain from those types of mistakes,
Mhm.
because those are like incredibly valuable scars that you have on you.
Mhm.
So
For
anyway,
sure.
so moving on, GovTrends. got into government hosting. I remember back, this is before cloud really became big. We had our own server racks and so forth, and had to hire DevOps people and manage that. Gosh, we've gotten hacked so many times; it's not even funny. And there was episodes where I remember there was one episode where at this time everyone was getting. It was the trend where I think it was Anonymous or one of those groups that would just hack into their websites and they'll deface them, right? And this is around the time where Obama was in the office or was just getting in. This is 2005, '06, I think. And we had sites, congressional members' websites getting hacked and defaced, and it was that was another learning lesson on how you get it through the stuff and how do you like quickly recover from that, right? I remember there was at this point reporters outside of our office with their vans and all that stuff, trying to get a sneak peek of like what happened. Um, Anyway, gosh, it's the challenges of business. Business can be incredibly fun, but it can be stressful at certain times too, especially when you're young. But you'll learn, and now, literally, I'm telling you, Steve, now nothing phases me, right? You get into any kind of battle, you're like, oh, I'll get out of this somehow. And others, I'll take my loss or I'll win it. It doesn't matter whichever it goes. But you go into this mentality. So that team grew big. I think it was like double the size of Acquire now, and we sold that to a strategic buyer um, in 2011. And again, timing was also on my side, and all that stuff. Same type of scenario as the last one. Got into this one, but 100% owner, never wanted another partner, ran the business, hired some great people, hired the other thing that I feel like a lot of entrepreneurs should consider is from the beginning hire your right hand. You got to find somebody that you just mold and you get through this thing. And I remember, and I hired this wonderful woman who really helped me build this business. Like she was the business, right? Like she was the one that was pushing and doing all that stuff, and it was incredible. Now this woman is like CEO of a large organization herself. So it's good to see things like that, but it's important that you surround yourselves with top talent, and you give people the entrepreneurial spirit for them to do things with you and for you, right?
Mm.
So that was I got to tell you, I feel like she was the reason for the success of that business. Now, a lot of grunt, a lot of effort, like from all parts, right? Getting into that kind of space, it was a 24/7 operation. And, there was many countless nights where, you were like, I know there's a speech or something that the president's giving, like something's going to happen, right? These, especially when you're like, managing congressional websites or campaign websites and senators' websites and so forth. Like, at that time it was the cloud and load balancing and all that stuff still wasn't as its, peak or caching and so forth. Still optimizing a lot of that stuff. So it was good memories to live through now on the other side. Tough business to be in as well. For
Yeah.
some reason, I always pick these tough businesses to get into. It's interesting. But anyway, I was overseas and I had just gotten married, and we were overseas exploring Europe, and I was like, God, I got to sell this business. I had this tingle in my body. I was like, I'm over this too, right? It's like this has an ending to it. Like I got to get out of this. Cloud was coming. It was becoming very complicated. It was expensive to run, um, and I had along the course built a lot of partners through this business too, right? The actual like true partnerships. And I remember, I sent a text message to this one partner. I was like, "Hey, like, would you consider exploring an acquisition? I'm like, I think this business, we've done a lot of great business, but I need a strategic partner to grow this thing. Would you be interested?" Responded right back to me, and next thing I know, when I came back to the States, we had a conversation. 6 months later, the business was bought by a strategic partner. The funny thing about that, and funny thing, it's probably sad, but this is around the same time the sequester happened, the government shutdowns and all that stuff. And that lasted a long time, but I don't know what happened, but that really destroyed some of that part of that business as well. Unforeseen to me, right? And so it was like timing for me to sell a business, a big another event happens. I get out of it without on purpose. It was just like timing was perfect. Um, anyway, so that was the story of GovTrends. Love that business. I love the name. It was like, I remember when I bought that domain name GovTrends, I was like, God, what are we going to do with this? This is like an incredible domain name. We're going to do great things with it. And, we did. It was just a phenomenal business that at the age of, 27, 28, and I sold that business when I was in my early 30s.
Yeah. And you kind of went through a couple things there on timing, because I was going to ask about timing, but you mentioned gut. That comes up a lot with the right time to sell. So we can shift to preparing based on all the successes that you've seen. How do you prepare? So if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking about selling, how could they take action and prepare their business?
So I for me personally, I learned a lot more about preparing on the last acquisition exit that I just had. 2 years ago, I had another exit. And this was I feel like the exit that I had, right? Like substantial and enough for me to walk away and sort of not have anything else lined up. So there's a lot that you can prepare for. And I think it starts really early. So for me, when I started the first two businesses, selling the business was never in my mind. It wasn't a thing. It's like, oh, I'm going to do a business. I'm going to do something of my own. I love that. I love being an entrepreneur to create something. But I never really thought about of selling. So it was always like these last gut reactions, right? But through the last acquisition, I built the last business to be sold. So the third business, I built it to be sold. So that's a whole different strategy, right? So you got gut, I want to get out of this, right for me. It's like, okay, let's figure this thing out. To I'm going to start a business, build the right foundation in place. I've learned a lot. And in the next 6 to 10 years, it's built to scale and to exit. So that's a different mindset. And I think in that scenario, you have to build a business from ground up to have a couple of things. It's got to be scalable. Well, what are you selling and how do you solve people's problems that is scalable, right? Can you get into a certain market and just own that? Incredibly important to have a strong leadership team so you are not the business. I mean, you've heard this probably in your other podcasts as well. But that is a valuable, incredible golden nugget for anyone building a business. Like you cannot be the business. The business has to be run by leaders. So when you are not there, the business can be run. That's a mind shift and important mindset to have. And I learned this from GovTrends when, as I mentioned to you, I hired my right hand who was the business, right? So this time around, I had six of them, and it was just a different. And they were with me from 2012 to they're still there at the exit. So building a scalable business, being in the right market, having strong leadership team, and of course, recurring revenue is a big thing. How do you get stickiness effect to your clients and customers that pay you every year and churn is limited? And those are really some important things. And then the rest is really, when you prepare for sale, you prepare a business to be sold. There's the basic stuff, clean books. How do you run a very efficient business where your financials are just super? There's you trim a lot of fat, you run very efficient, your books are clean, and you have long-term contracts. So I never brought in a client that was not willing to sign a multi-year contract with us. So I had that forecast for the future as well. So those are some really important lessons that that I would pass on to any entrepreneur who wants to start a business now.
Nice. Nice. And that takes us to valuation. When it comes to sort of stepping forward with your best foot forward, what can you share around how to drive value? Like we talked about clean books. We talked about really having a great team that can run. But what can you share around like driving that valuation up when you're talking to a potential buyer?
So the business that I just recently exited was a full service marketing agency, more focused in web experiences. So we built large web experiences from mid to enterprise accounts,
Hmm.
and really the goal there when you're looking for buyers. So we sold to private equity on the last round, and private equity and how they evaluate and do that is different than a strategic buyer than venture. Totally different thing, right? Being in professional services, you're not getting, multiples on your top line, but you get multiples on your EBITDA and your profit. So it's a little different ball game, but exactly what I shared before. It's like, when you get a customer, how sticky are you?
Hmm.
What's the percentage of that customer sticking around for the long term? So when the acquisition happens, you're still bringing in revenue automatically. You have the leadership team. You have to prove that you're not the business. That's important. And your clients. Are these sticky clients? Are these small businesses? Are these mid market enterprise? And are they willing to write large checks to you? Those are things, and the long term contracts. I think those are things that really drive your evaluation, but also the niche that you're in. Is it a niche that has legs for future growth? Or when you sell into private equity and they have a portfolio of companies, are you a piece of a bolt on that is valuable to cross sell into? Because
Hmm.
suddenly it's just you can make a lot more money. So there's a lot of different strategies to get into that, and that was our strategy. Was like, okay, we're very very focused on a particular business model, and that was technology, selling web experiences to mid to enterprise. And along the way, we would sell additional services like SEO, paid media, whatever. But we had partners in those things. But we were, a special force that just could build incredible web experiences. And our niche was also to very be technically adapt to doing integrations and a lot of things a lot of people can't really outsource. And we were like the perfect bolt on to a large marketing agency who could do all the other marketing stuff, but didn't have the technical experience or past performance or the kind of clients that they could sell directly into. So those are some things that you have to think about and find the right buyers, but it's part of the journey.
Hmm. Nice. And that's a fantastic segue to the finale. Knowing what you know now, what would you tell Ab 10 years ago?
Oh my God, that's a great one. The What I would tell Ab 10 years ago, I'll probably say go back a little bit more. And this is really, really important because I feel like I've been preaching this to my 12-year-old. And it's network. You have to know a lot of people, right? That is one thing. And I share this because now that I'm out of the this last exit, I made a commitment to myself that I was going to rebuild a lot of my relationships. And I remember a board member said to me the other day, he's like, "Ah, your network is much bigger than you think." And I was like, "Really?" I was looking back, I was like, "Shoot, I have 25 years of experience being out there. It really is big." So this year, about 3 weeks ago, like I started just randomly send text messages and messages to people that I've known in the past. Like I reconnected with my first boss from responses that I was telling you about after 20 years. And he's retired now, like some incredible journey he had. We literally connected last week, and that led up to a lot of other stuff. But it's really networking. I would have told myself build a bigger Rolodex, right? Because it's so incredibly important of who you hang out with and who you know, and then so forth, because they will come in back in the picture. Um, and it's that would be the biggest advice that I'd give myself, and I now truly give that to anyone else that I meet along the way.
Nice. The network is the net worth. Love it. Love
That's what they say. What about you,
it.
Steve? What advice would you give yourself going back 15 years?
um, I would say to just be calm and try to be more present because I was always just thinking about the next thing, not taking a beat and celebrating any of the wins. Like just as you, I'm sure, have experienced, you just sort of bulldoze over everything. You just keep going, and
Everything.
you don't actually take a beat and
Yeah.
calm down and say like, oh wow, that was actually like a pretty crazy thing that just happened. You just keep on going, and I think that's just, yeah. If there's anything I've learned, it's to like take a beat for each win. But that's, as we've talked about, that's only something you learn through a bunch of failures and a bunch of a bunch of lessons. Is to just take a moment. So that's probably my biggest learning over the years. But that takes us to: are you working on anything now, and where can people learn more?
No, I appreciate that. I'm semi-retired, but I'm itching to do something else, right? So, but this has been the incredible part that I shared with you. Like the past 3 weeks, I've had reached out to my network, and I'm in exploratory phase of my life. And as I connect with people, like I'm actually, because I'm not under stress, I'm learning a lot about myself through others, right? Like I'm learning, like I ask people, like, what are my superpowers? Like, people that I've known, and you really learn a lot through this process. And it's interesting, the past 3 weeks, just having these exploratory calls, I've been presented with three opportunities, and I don't know if they're right for me yet, because I feel like I'm learning a lot about myself, and I'm really focused on, who I am, and where I want to be. I'm also retooling myself quite a bit. Because just like you don't celebrate the wins. And I remember this, like, when my first deal, six-figure deal, I celebrated for like a month, right? And then it got to a point, you close $1 million deal, the high is for literally 2 minutes, and then you're off to the next, right? You're
Yeah.
like, oh, where's the next one? Where's the next one? So it's for me, it's definitely been a wonderful post acquisition right now, where I'm enjoying myself a lot, time for myself to do these types of conversations and share back to the community. Spending a lot of time with my kids, which I feel like, most entrepreneurs, by accident abandon. But it's interesting too, because like you also reach a point in your life where you also peak of your career, right? So you can't go that a waste either. But then if you're a family man, you have kids, and they're young, that's peak of their lives as well. So there's this balance. You're like, shoot, peak of my career, peak of my kids. How do I merge those two together? There's ways to do it. So anyway, so I'm doing a little bit of consulting. I'm still with a private equity firm right now as a consultant, and I love helping them. I love the business. This group, Trinity Hunt Partners, a phenomenal founder-friendly private equity firm. So if anyone listening to this, great private equity firm to connect with. So just really trying to enjoy life, and something will come out of it. Unlike the other businesses, there was always another business lined up. This one, there isn't any. So it's a new thing for me, but I think this is the new thing for me, is to reconnect with people that I've loved and enjoyed. And I've had some really, really great calls, Steve, with just people I've
Oh,
known in the past that I haven't talked to for a while.
nice. Very cool. And where can people connect with you?
Sure. I'm heavy on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, just Google Ab Emam. So LinkedIn, Ab Emam, you'll find me. That's the only place that I'm really active on. Shoot me a note if you have any ideas or want to start a business, or just shoot the shit, and learn from my mistakes and successes. Happy to share.
Nice.
Oh, one last thing, Steve, and this is also another thing that I think is incredibly important. You asked, having mentors. I don't know if you had them, but
Mhm.
mentors are incredibly valuable. Having the right mentors are incredibly valuable. So I look at myself too. It's like, the battles that I've fought and the successes that I've won, I'm like a time machine for people, right? It's like you come in, and I'll share with you, and I'll help you along the journey, because I want to see other people succeed and learn from my mistakes that cost me a lot of time, a lot of money, and all those headaches and, ulcers. Like, you don't have to have those if you're willing to have, a good mentor, and you're actually willing to listen.
Yeah, 100%. And I've talked about that a lot on the pod, especially through M&A. situations where you can't talk to anybody. Like you literally
Yeah.
don't have anybody that's not aligned or financially incentivized to tell you something. And you can't tell people on the team. You can't
Yeah.
rattle the boat too much while you're still trying to go through a process. So mentors, advisors, groups, all that. It's so cool how much is out there now for
So
people
much.
that I wish I would have had through the first exit, because it is extremely lonely and crazy to do it all
Yeah.
by yourself. So very well said. Wherever you guys are listening on iTunes or Spotify, the link that Ab mentioned will be in the show notes. But thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your wisdom.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate you.